Welcome back to the podcast. Today I have a conversation with Alessa Caridi, also known as the Power Posture Pro. Alessa is a master certified Pilates instructor, functional fitness expert, and the founder of JōbuFIT, a workplace movement company dedicated to solving the aches, pains, and productivity challenges of the modern workday. Alessa brings a wealth of knowledge from her experiences of teaching Pilates on 3 continents, owning studios in 2 countries, and studying the healthy living practices of Okinawa, Japan, which is home to some of the longest living people on Earth. She has distilled her knowledge and insights into practical tools for busy professionals through her book, The Ultimate Workspace Toolkit. In this episode, Alessa will share actionable techniques and simple science to help us move smarter, reduce stress, and thrive in both our work and personal lives. Now on to our conversation. Well, first, Alessa, thank you for joining me for this podcast recording today.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you.
And you're the founder of JōbuFIT, and you're also the writer of the Ultimate Workspace Toolkit. So what inspired you to start prioritizing health and fitness in your life?
Oh, goodness. Well, I grew up in a family of doctors, and so I always knew that there was an important element into understanding your body. And so that was always kind of like the innate thing. But then it really came to the forefront when I got to university. When I was a child and I was dancing and growing up in high school, especially, I started figuring out what my body needed to be able to keep up with the 25-hour plus a week dancing and traveling and competing, all of that. But once I got to university and I had to feed myself and I had to get myself to classes and to really mentally kind of prepare. So both aspects, right? Physical and mental. And I saw what happens when you don't fully understand that. And so that was really the first time that I was like, ooh, now I got to really figure this out for myself. And that kind of started to spark in me an understanding of needing to know this amazing machine that we live in.
Okay, and that's a good point because in college, a lot of people, while many people can put on weight because it's so much work, I went to college late and I gained maybe like 3 or 4 pounds, but to me it was a big deal. But at the same time, you're making the sacrifice for a reason. So what did you find as solutions initially for you to kind of mitigate, kind of organize your schedule and take care of your health?
Well, so for me, the first thing that I had to kind of figure out was nutrition. And I feel like that's a big one for any student that lives away from home for the first time, because up until that point, my parents were providing, what was in the house is what you got to eat. Most of the time my mom cooked or it was leftovers, or if I was at a late dance practice, it was whatever was in the refrigerator, which tend to be healthier options. I was very blessed to have that growing up. So I knew already what was healthy, but that doesn't mean that you make the right choices when you're in university and you're in a cafeteria type setting and socializing. You end up socializing around food, right? So you're sitting for long periods of time and, oh, that looks good. Oh, there's 30 options for me to try. There's 10 desserts. So I really had to understand what my body needed for fuel, because I was a dance major. So I was dancing probably 5 hours a day. I would say it's a little bit more on the conservative side of things. So I needed to know what my body needed to be able to perform, to stay on top of my workload. But then I also had to realize what that the receptors in my brain, like my body actually saying, you don't need to eat that because you are full. And when you sit there for long enough, you just want to eat, and you don't realize it, right? You're talking, you're socializing. And so that was the first time that I really, wow, that was a life-changing thing. And the first semester, it hit me, the freshman 10 for me was more like the freshman 20, I'll admit that. And I went home for Christmas, the holiday season, and my mom was like, what have you been doing? Just a very friendly, like, what happened here? And then I really started to dive into, okay, I need to figure out what it is exactly that my body needs. And so once I got that nutrition standpoint side of things, it was easy for me to step back into my dance role and realize that nutrition, eating one healthy meal a week wasn't going to cut it, right? It's an everyday thing. And so now that's kind of the way that I look at physical fitness and health, really physical health of your everyday, because it's not,
Okay.
you don't work out once, right? Like for 1 hour once a week and say I'm healthy. You really have to look at it in the bigger picture as something that is an innate everyday practice for you to do.
What resources did you turn to when you initially started researching nutrition and fitness? And are they the same resources you use now, or did those resources maybe help you in the beginning and you've evolved into something else? And the reason I'm asking that is JōbuFIT, it's inspired by a Japanese word and it's strong and solid. So I want to get to how
Yeah.
you got to JōbuFIT.
So to make it there, yeah. So um it's back in the day, I'm a lot older than I hopefully I look. But the original app that I used to track like what I was eating to better understand my nutrition actually doesn't exist anymore. So I did use a very early like version of an app, which wasn't even on a phone, it was on a computer. That's how, like, this is like pre that. And so that gave me a kind of snapshot to being able to record things and to see that it wasn't just a one meal a day or a couple of meals a week kind of situation. It was throughout the day that you had to kind of say like, okay, this is how I'm taking care of my body. This is how I'm fueling myself. And then fast forward to the physical side of things were always within me. I always was a dancer. Those were the kind of things that, it was my job, really, right? Because I was dancing for commercials, movies, shows, things that I had to keep active for. So that was more of a different kind of motivation, right? Just the same as somebody who has to like put a deck together because that's part of their career. So that portion of my health was, I don't want to, taken care of. Maybe I took it for granted, that kind of situation. But then when I got older, graduated university, and I said, okay, I'm going to go and dance. I'm going to audition. I'm going to do what I love. This is my time to, now really go and do it, full time. And I ended up breaking my foot in the first 6 months after I graduated from university. That was a very rude awakening. And the catalyst then for JōbuFIT is this is kind of where it began, because I always loved anatomy and taking care of my body and kind of understood what it took. Now I needed to figure it out from somebody who couldn't move very much, who, couldn't dance, which was my livelihood. So then when those things were taken away from me, I said, okay, what can I do? And because I had moved back to New York, because I went to school in LA, so I moved back cross country. For Christmas, my parents said, we're going to gift you your first Pilates instructor training
Mm-hmm.
class. And so that was like a big, like, oh, okay, so here's how I can manipulate my body to be in proper posture and strong, and I can really figure things out that way. And then from there, when becoming an instructor, I'm a giant nerd and I've always loved
Uh-huh.
anatomy, and everything that I do, I love. I'm like, I've got my flashcards that are sitting on my bookshelf right there. I can see them. And that's like a 10-minute practice for me a night, just kind of looking at those things. So I'm a giant
Mm-hmm.
nerd that way. But then I ended up meeting my husband, and he said, hey, you want to move to Japan? And we moved to Japan. And I said, okay, well, again, I can't dance anymore. I'm in another country. Side note, I did do a little bit of commercial work there, but that's a different topic. But I decided to take my reformer and take all of the classes that I learned, because I'm a giant nerd and just kept getting certified and certified and certified in different things. Took all of my knowledge with me. And when I was in Japan, I opened the first to the island of Okinawa Pilates studio. And so when I was there, I trained Marine sailors, soldiers, airmen, DOD staff, professional stay-at-home moms, and even some locals while I was there. And I had anatomy books, in the same anatomy book in English and in Japanese, and was able to kind of point at things so that I could help people that didn't have the full, the language barrier was there. And so when I saw how everybody worked differently, the different requirements that everybody had during their work days, it started to dawn on me that even though everybody did different things, right? Every kind of person did different kind of levels of physical requirements within their work days. Around 3 o'clock, everyone had that crash. Everybody's shoulders and backs and hips were hurting them. And then I started looking outward. When I moved to Japan, I had my little miniature poodle at the time, and we would walk in the mornings. And just like we have street lamps here in the US, In Japan, there are street lamps with speakers on them. In Okinawa, there are. And so you just hear this music that would play at the same time every day. And it
Wow.
didn't matter how old you were, didn't matter what you did for a living. Everybody stops and does this stretch and strengthen. It's more of like a stretch and awakening routine. And I'd even pass the school every once in a while on my loop with my dog and see the kids in their like the front, I guess it was like a play area before they would enter the building, and they'd all line up. And so they learned this from a young age. And then when I would walk on the seawall that was there, the construction workers stop what they're doing. And another little Japanese lady would tie up her dog onto a light lamp post that was there, and she would do the same routine. So from there, I saw this amazing thing that happened daily there. And to see how it's built culturally and habitually into their culture, right? The everyday practice, and say, wow, this is something that we don't do in the US. You know, even if people do their 1 hour routine every day, what's the percentage of people in the US that actually do that? And then it's not even about sweating or getting to the point of exhaustion like so many of the US workouts are. This is just about aligning your body and taking care of yourself so that you can really complete your day and complete the requirements that you have throughout your day.
So with all that, because that's quite a journey you went on to
Yeah.
become a Pilates instructor, and practicing with on actual clients is so
Mhm.
key because you see how different bodies work, like you said. And I think a lot of people don't factor that in when you're a practitioner and you're trying to give advice outside of the practitioner environment. They don't realize once you work with so many different body types, you learn so much more about how to reach
Yeah.
certain goals and what barriers could come in the way. But a big takeaway was the culture. So,
Yes.
did you notice with your Japanese clients versus your American clients, whether they were airmen or, um, actively in the military or not, was there a difference in their body's response to Pilates, or how easily their body adjusted to Pilates?
Um, I don't know if it's what they did for a living. It's more, I would say, an age type thing. Because the majority of my clientele were military and their spouses. That was probably about 75 to 80% of my clientele when I was training people there. And I will say, when somebody started a little bit younger, and with and also you have to put aside injuries or something like scoliosis, like preconditions, like if you put that kind of stuff aside, because I did have a big group of people that did have injuries before I saw them. I think it's definitely younger, tends to be someone that bounces into this a little bit more. But it's not to say that older bodies can't benefit, especially from Pilates, because it's not a big, it's not a hit workout. It's something that really any body can do.
There's a recent study. The fittest people in
Ooh,
the world are the people who move throughout the day, not like 1 hour a
yes.
day, 5 days a week, or
Hmm.
even 7 days a week. So that was the main core of the question. I wasn't sure if maybe the people in Japan, if they move more throughout the day, if they had more higher success,
I
for
think
example.
so. Again, with the idea of learning to eat and then having the component, so that really being like a total body, total mindset thing. The Japanese culture, the Japanese people are some of the healthiest people and longest living people in the world. And so definitely that definitely comes into play with the ability to move more, and it's not, if it's not move more, it's just more of a kind of innate, I have to move kind of feeling. So they find ways to fit it in, which is the reason why I teach things like health interruptions instead of set workouts, so that people can kind of plug little bits of movement into their day instead of feeling like I have to get an hour in, or I have to get in this 30-minute lunch workout in, instead of it just being 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes, like every so often throughout your day.
Yeah, and that's a good segue into your workspace toolkit and what people can do when they're working for hours a day. Like, for example, um, even as a person who prioritizes fitness, like me, for
Mhm.
example, I train 5 days a week now. It used to be 7 when I was in bodybuilding, but 5 days a week.
Oh,
But I technically work 3 to 4 jobs because I have multiple projects I'm always working on. So those little breaks while you're working are so important. And it's kind of something you have to end up doing. Otherwise, you're just not going to get enough movement in throughout the day with such a burden of work. So can
yeah.
you
And also if you, because what you said in your phrasing there, you have to move. If you look at it as I'm protecting myself and it's more of a need instead of a have to thing, it also becomes a little bit easier in that way too. And that's also one of the things that I like to talk about is finding your red car moments. And so it's more of a, oh, well, I had, that catchphrase, free time, right? When you have like free time after you eat, but before your meeting starts. And there's no such thing as free time. It's your time. It's all your time. But if you find these kind of minutes, these little bits here and there, and you say, okay, I need to protect myself. Let me do, walk up and down a flight of stairs 4 times because I have 5 minutes. It's something that will protect yourself more than just saying, I have to do this because it's got to fit in my day right now.
So what is an example of what people can do just briefly? Say they're at their desk and say they do just have 5 minutes between meetings. What are some things people can do to get their blood circulation going, maybe correct their posture?
Sure, sure. So I do something that's called, should we start with posture or do you want to start with movement first? Where would you like to start?
Blood circulation, because we have
Okay.
to kind of talk a little bit more about the posture component and how important that is, because I think a lot of people might not realize how important that is, especially when it comes to like their hip flexors and everything. So if we
Mm-hmm.
start with blood circulation and then you could give an intro to why you should prioritize working on your posture and then give an
Sure. Okay.
example.
So a couple of things on how you can get your blood moving more. Something that we take for granted are what I call our forgotten body parts, which are our fingers, our toes, and our eyes. They work so hard for us. Whether you're on your phone and you're going like this all day long and hunched over, or you're staring at your computer screen, because for whatever reason, people think that to get something done faster, I'm going to get closer to that thing, right? Especially if you're on your phone, you're like, I'm going to get closer to it and it's going to help me get it done faster, which is not really the case. And also our toes and our feet, because we end up sitting, or even if we're standing, sometimes the bad posture creeps in and we're not taking care of those. So really, if you move your fingers and your toes, and very easy, and you can do this with your hands or your feet, you make fists and you squeeze for a count of 5, just as tight as you can. You can do this with your feet too. And then you stretch through your hands as hard as you can for a count of 5, and repeat that 5 or 10 times. So then you start warming up those digits, especially in the winter months. It gets cold, and that's a really good way to do it. There's some other things you can give yourself, just a little like rub, starting with your pinky. You start the base of your hand towards your wrist, and then you take the other hand and you kind of rub up through your fingers all the way to the tips of your nail, and that'll warm up your hand. And it really does. It feels really great. But your eyes have muscles. That's what's holding everything in there. And we stare and we look at painful lights, and we look at things that are harmful to us. So there's a series of funny faces. And for people who are listening, maybe you want to watch this. If you want to get good giggle at me, that's fine. But if you are watching this, you want to try it, just, laugh along, because that's all I can do too, because it's really something that I laugh at myself for. So really simply the same thing, just like we're making fists and extend, you want to do the same thing with your eyes. So all you do is you close your eyes and you squeeze, and you really want to squeeze into those muscles. You want to make your face feel like as small as you possibly can get it. So your whole face is closing in. And then you want to open your eyes, open your mouth, stick out your tongue, and make your face as big as you possibly can. This is kind of more of the silly part. So you really want to go and really push through everything, and do that 5 or 10 times. And that's going to awaken your face, but it's also going to help you breathe better, because a lot of times what happens when we're sitting at our computer, I'm going to just turn sideways so those of the people that are watching this can see. When you're sitting at your computer and you're getting your work done, this happens, right? Because we want to get closer, or getting tired, or you're leaning forward on it. But what also happens here within your neck, your skull is heavy. So it's getting pulled down here. And what's happening is it's cutting off the ability to really take in oxygen into your body. So the blood isn't circulating quite as much. You're taking more shallow breaths. And so oxygen isn't getting to your brain sufficiently. But when we sit upright and we're looking straight at our computer screen or looking forward, we have long necks, we have the ability to move around, and we can properly get oxygen to our entire body. And so that's just a really big wake-up call, right? So if you squeeze really tiny and open everything really wide, you're reminding your body to extend, right? And even though we're working on our face and our mouth and our eyes, it's really a reminder to really just get everything, loosened up and widened.
So on your website, you have some images of people stretching. I think it was taken in
Mm.
Japan. So what are some stretches or bigger physical movements people can do
Uh,
at their desk?
my absolute favorite thing to do when you're sitting upright, and everything that I do and teach in JōbuFIT always starts with a posture check. So I know we're going to get to that, so I'll skip that for right now. But after you align your body, you sitting up nice and tall. Now, disclaimer, it's not my fault if you knock over your computer. Okay. So make sure you push yourself away from your desk. You can do these sitting, but it is not my fault. This is on you to make sure that there's nothing around you. So look around for that. Sitting up nice and tall, and we start with our hands on our shoulders. And you want to imagine that your elbows are pointing out far to the opposite walls, and you want to draw circles with your elbows in both directions, keeping your shoulders down away from your ears. Then you're going to extend your hands out. You're going to draw the circles with your hands, small. And then what you're going to do is you're going to put both of your hands on your desk in front of you, and you're going to do big swimming motion. So like you're doing the backstroke. So you're going to bring your arm up and over and look behind you and come back down. And you're going to do that about 10 times, everything 10 times both sides. Forward, back, bigger, and then the whole backstroke, so that you really get your entire spine moving. Because even if you're standing, this works sitting or standing, because you have to, everything we do is so forward. It's so parallel and forward. So adding in the ability to function, outwards, and then adding in the rotation both to side to side, really awakens your spine. Again, it gets your shoulders down away from your ears. It undoes that tech hunch and allows more oxygen to get back into your body.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about tech neck and Zoom fatigue. So all
Mm.
those techniques you just mentioned, they
Yeah.
combat both.
Yeah, I would say my most favorite tool for awakening your body is a breathing technique. It's called box breathing. It's not something that I came up with. It's out there. You can look up videos for it. My favorite way to do it is inhale in through your nose for a count of 5, hold for a count of 5, and then exhale out of your mouth for a count of 5, and then work up, so that then you do it a count of 7 each way, then you do it a count of 8 each way, then you do it a count of 10 each way. And that way you're really exercising, because that's what it is. You're exercising your lungs. You're taking control, taking a passive action, breathing, right? Just like our heart rate, just like our digestion. We don't think about those things. Our body does that for us. So you're taking a passive action like breathing, you're turning it into an active action, which then actually gives you a little, I call it the natural shot of espresso, because, it's like a caffeine shot to your brain. You're oxygenating your brain. There's a couple of posture things that I do add into that, which I will say, maybe we can link to the full length posture video
Yes.
in the description for this, because it's best described and shown there. And I hate to describe it here and then it kind of get lost in the audio kind of recording of it. But when you
Yeah.
add in the actual movement of focusing on the rib cage, because I do not teach belly breathing. And that's something that I don't think it's beneficial, especially to the average human that's just typing away on their computer all day long. I teach more of an anatomical breath from your rib cage. And when you start to really exercise your ribs, your lungs, and function that way, you might actually even feel lightheaded, because you're starting to pull oxygen to the places that it needs to be. And that's something, an easy 10 deep breaths anytime you start to feel fatigued is like a good stretch for your lungs and your brain when your body needs it, but you need to keep going and get your work done.
How does Zoom fatigue and tech neck impact our health?
let's start with Zoom fatigue. That's when your eyes, right? And we were talking about, bringing warmth, bringing focus back to your eyes before. And I mean, computer screens, phones, any type of screen, that light is just not, it's not good for you. And so those kinds of things, when you have something like fatigue, eye fatigue is real. Not being able to focus on things, seeing double, those are real things. And to simply the very quick kind of reset for your eyes and your brain is to look away from your computer screen. And what I also believe that there's a mental component there too. So when you're staring at a screen for hours at a time, yes, the physical is there where your eyes start to fatigue, but also your brain is like, oh God, again, are we still doing this? Like, do I have to keep looking at this light? And so something I tell people is to keep things around them, pictures of family members, your past vacation, a pet, that in some way elicits a little bit of joy. So you can look away from your computer screen and say, oh yeah, I really loved that vacation. Or you look outside, count the trees, count the birds that you see, look at the shapes of the clouds. So that way it gets your brain thinking about something else other than your work. So that way, when you do have to kind of get back to it, your brain got a little bit of a break, a health interruption there. So
Yeah.
that's the way to kind of combat the Zoom fatigue. Did that make sense?
Yeah, I can attest to that because I used to work in an area with no windows and it was so
Oh
hard to
God.
focus. I just
Yeah.
could not focus. And I was also, my mood was also down. So that's true. I
Yeah.
agree with that.
Especially in the place, did you have what do you call it? Fluorescent lights? Did you have fluorescent lights in the room?
Yeah, I always have, the eco-friendly lights, but it was
Okay.
being in the corner that was the problem. Even though it was my environment, it just
Mm.
not having a window nearby was just very difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Actually, the first talk, I don't know if it was the first talk, but one of the very first talks that I ever gave was in New York City at an accounting firm that was in the basement of a building. So they didn't have any light whatsoever. And accounting, this is like the stressful time for accounting, like January to April, right? Because they're doing taxes and everything.
Hmm.
And the way that they had helped and promoted health in their workplace until they got to me was they would bring in a masseuse once a week and you could sign up for a massage. Now we're talking hundreds of employees, right? Once a week, as again, like we were talking about, it's not really going to be helpful. So when they brought me in and I'm walking in, and this is cubicle after cubicle after cubicle, like all the way down the line, and there's no windows and the lighting was bad and people had to come to work in suits. And so there's just everything was working against people. And that's really when you need to be able to say, commit to like what I teach, a 50-10 ratio, 5-0-10 ratio, where you take 50 minutes of completely focused work. But for them, the 10 minutes of movement and being away from their work was really the only way that they were going to stay productive. It was really not an ideal situation to be required to work that way 5 days a week. Yeah. Oh, and
I
so then you
totally
want to
agree.
talk tech neck too, right?
Yes, yes.
So something that is big, we were talking about how people really like to get close to their computers, the screen, like they want to get closer. The closer that they get to their tech, the more that they're going to be productive. But our technology is never going to love you. It doesn't matter how close you get to it. It's never going to help you back. So something I always tell people is you want to check yourself before you check your tech. And this might be the perfect time to kind of segue into posture, because you need to build a workspace that works for you. But the only way to build that workspace and make it 100% customized for you is you have to be able to properly align your body so that you can protect it and then get to your tech. Because right now, I have my laptop sitting in front of me. It's on a laptop stand because I want to make sure that when I'm looking at my computer, that my eye level, like if I'm looking directly ahead, is on that address bar, where you type in www dot. So it's not at the top of the screen, right? Because then I'm looking up and beyond my screen. If I'm going to be at the top of the screen, you do want it to be just about an inch below, right where the top of your computer is. 3-step posture check. Should we go through that?
Yes.
Okay. So just the title says, it's only 3 steps. It's meant to be done really quickly, and it's to establish a strong brain-body connection and align your body so that you're in your best posture, not my best posture, not somebody that's in your office that you work with. This is built so that you can be at your strongest, right? Because that's what Jobu means. I mean, it's an adjective in Japanese that means strong and solid. So we're building strong and solid bodies for the workplace and beyond. So here we go. Step number 1. You want to take your eyes and you want to look down at your feet. You want to make sure that both feet are firmly planted on the floor, right? All 10 toes are pointed forward. So really, that's why we take our eyes and we look down, because what our brain thinks is forward could be something like this. It could be something like this. It could be something like this. So that's what we really need to realign. And that way we're taking our eyes, establishing that brain body connection by looking down and making sure the whole foot is on the ground. So you're not rocking out, you're not rocking in, you really got that foot placed down on the ground. That's step number 1. Step 2, we want to create a long spine. So you want to sit up tall. We want to imagine that there's one strand of hair at the top of your head that's getting pulled up to the lights. So we don't want to think, okay, I'm going to be tall, I'm going to stick my chest out, or I'm going to stick my bum out behind me. Instead, we want the length to come from the top of your head, like you have one strand of hair being pulled up to the lights. That's step number 2. Here comes 3. Really easy. Shake your head. No, I'm not ready for my work day. But yes, I'm going to practice proper posture. I'm going to be aligned and strong, and use this anytime you feel fatigued, because then you're going to be able to approach your workday to get your workday accomplished and have energy at the end of your workday to do whatever it is that you want to do. Those are the 3 steps.
That is a great quick tip. And I do have another question for you. We
Go for it.
discussed a little bit before we did this podcast. So I have some issues on the left side of my body with my upper back, and it goes
Okay.
down to my hip flexor and my knee now. And
Okay.
you kind of mentioned younger people responded better to Pilates.
Mhm.
So in my younger years, I grew up like just sitting at the computer. So I think the problem started from there. So what can I do now that it seems to be compounding as I get
So
older?
the one thing that I will say is, like, when you get pain, do you feel like, oh, I got to stretch it out, I got to rub this side, I got to make sure I'm taking care of that side of my body? Do you have like your go-tos to kind of cope with what you have? Do you have something already set in place?
I've mostly focused on strengthening. So I work on it at the
Okay.
gym and I do mobility
Okay.
and I've changed my
Perfect.
training, but I also do the
Yes.
pick up and drop method
Hmm.
before I do any weight
Yeah,
bearing.
that's also good. So the same thing, right? Like shaking your head yes and no, and making sure your shoulders are away from your ears. That's an element of the pick up and then drop, right? And realizing what you're doing. And so another set of exercises that I do are what I call selective tension. And it comes from a modern dance technique, which that's a whole, it's like a 20-minute practice right there. But that pick up, meaning the tense, and drop, which is, it really allows your brain to say, okay, this is what tense is, this is what relaxed is, this is where I should be, right? In that relaxed state, not in the previous tense state. But the reason I asked if you have coping mechanisms, so some people, if you have a left side and you kind of like rub it out, or you like lean against the door frame, or you have something that where you stretch it out, that pain. Well, I want to challenge you that that's great that you're doing that you're rubbing it out and you're stretching it out in those ways. But what you do on the painful side, you also have to do on the non-painful side. So it's really, people think like, okay, if this is the part of my body that's hurting, my left side, I'm going to pay attention to my left side. But in all actuality, what's happening, and this is not from my Pilates. This is actually, I learned this from nursing my first. I'm just laying that all out there. For me, I have an issue with my neck and into my shoulder and into my clavicle, because as a mom, when I'm hinging forward, and this was like my first side that I would do, and what I realized is when I would go to a masseuse, he wasn't just doing one side for me. He was making sure that my other side was also stretched out and relaxed and strengthened and all of those things. And so if you really take care of both sides of your body, you stay even with both sides of your body, you're going to protect the painful, problem side, let's call it weaker side. I hate to really say that, but the side that causes you pain better by making sure that both sides of your body are aligned. Because just like I said, when you're sitting at your desk, everything is parallel, right? Everything is in front of you. And that can actually work very much to your advantage in something that when you have pain. I'm not trying to create statues, right? Because we're trying to break the statue lifestyle by adding movement in. But when you do have to have that focus time, making sure that, both feet are flat down on the ground, and when you get to the 6 steps without getting too technical to like overload people here. But when you have your feet down on the ground and they're both pointed forward and they're hip distance apart, and what's really happening here is you're not only working on your feet, but you're also then working on your adductors, which are the muscles that pull your legs together. And those actually will help you pull everything in and even yourself out. And then you work all the way up into your bum and your hips. And by creating that base, that like strong foundation, you're going to be able to alleviate a lot of the tension, a lot of the pain that comes in your upper body. Now, I know that's like a just do this and all the pain will go away. And it's probably not. So one of the things that I also want you would suggest that you focusing on is the stretching breaks, but making sure that you're not overstretching, because when you are stretching those things, if you're used to, bending a full 90 degrees, but you end up injuring yourself. And like you said, you've been doing this, it's been painful for a really long time. When you're younger, you're a lot more mobile. You need to be careful that you're not stretching, knowing the difference between like a good pain, meaning a
And a
stretching
bad.
kind of pain,
Mm-hmm.
exactly, and the bad pain, because you also keeping that distance and that length while you're stretching out that side of the problem side, and then focusing on making sure you even it out with the other side. But really, you have to be sure that you're not re-injuring it every time, because you're not pushing farther. And the goal would be to, if it does persist, to work with your physical therapist so that you get to the point where you are feeling you're better, you're at that, and then push yourself to get back to what is your normal full range of motion. But
Yeah.
the real big key here, especially because you have to be at your workspace, is to focus on your sitting or standing setup, the way that you approach your tech and the way that you arrange your desktop, which I talk about in my book, because that's really going to be impactful for the way that you move around your workspace. Having things at arm's reach. So what I mean by that is, if you have your cell phone next to you, you don't want your cell phone to be here, right? Where you have to reach for it. You don't want it to be like beyond your computer. You actually want it to be right. If I took my hand and my hand's not, it's just kind of hanging out by my side, and I put my hand on the desk, that's where your hand should be. Same thing with your mouse. Same if you have a built-in telephone, same thing that way. Because what happens to us is we spend so much time, typing away, not moving at all. And then all of a sudden, oh, our phone rings and we reach, and our body, because we're getting older, you reach too fast, or, you move too quickly, and all of a sudden you go, and your body's like, oh, okay. So if we arrange our workspace, same thing, water bottle is a big thing, right? You realize you're thirsty. Oh my gosh, I have to chug my water now. Make sure that's just beyond, right? So it's not a
Okay.
big reach forward. It is closer to you. And it sounds so silly. Things that, like little adjustments to where things are. The same speakers, when you're listening to
Yeah.
something, to turn your head to listen to it so that it's not, all the way over. You're not tipping your whole body sideways to listen to it.
Okay, so just rapid fire, because I know you have to get going, but
Sure.
which one would you recommend, or can you comment on either? So, would you recommend a standing desk or a stability ball to sit on at work as someone trying to work on their posture and or blood circulation?
If so, I tell people, don't buy things. Like that's a trap. When you're don't buy things. I'd rather you sit on a rock than buy some kind of like, big fancy multi-thousand-dollar chair that people do. If you want to do that, that's fine, whatever, but you still need to learn how to support your body, how your body works, so that you can, again, same thing. You want to learn how to use your body so that way when you do sit down, you're using your body, the chair is supporting it, not the other way around. And then if you do want something, if you are looking to make an investment, if you are moving and you're like, oh, what kind of desk should I buy? I would get one that's sit stand. Because those are now space saving. They go up and down, because I tell people constantly, sitting, the solution to sitting is not standing, because standing has the same problems, just in the opposite direction. You really want to be aware of how your body is. Again, reason why I say work in the 50-10 ratio. Spend 50 minutes completely focused on your work, spend 10 minutes a break, moving around, getting the blood flowing, and just being able to separate yourself from your work mentally.
In your book, The Ultimate Workspace Toolkit, you talk about creating sustainable, high productivity.
Mhm.
Can you share a few takeaways from your book?
Oh goodness. Well, I think one of the things that are really that it starts off with how to approach your workspace. So there is actually a picture, a tabletop of a desk and where to put these things. And it talks about the computer screen and how high it should be. It also in the book gives you an entire breakdown of the entire day. And if you work within the 50-10 ratio, things that you can plug into your day. I think there's like 40 something things that you can plug into your day. So it's like a good month of activities for you to do in those 10-minute health intermission, ways to take advantage of things. It also has stretching and has movement to energize. It has what we were talking about, the finger, toes, and eyes, the forgotten body parts in there. It also, I know we didn't really dive into the mental health in your workday too, but it has some tips on how to kind of approach coworkers better. And then one of my favorite things that I used to do when a lot more people were in office, we're getting back to being in office, a lot more people being in office. One of my favorite things to teach, I know, I see your thumbs down. I know a lot of people are like, no, never again. But I do know a lot of people are being required to go back to their offices. And one of my favorite things to talk about with individual companies and also like when people were when I would go into New York City into these big offices that in big high rises, I would teach people how to have walking meetings. And in there's like a form that you can fill out that discusses the walking meeting so that you can actually have a productive walking meeting. That's in the back. And then also a little fun thing that's in back there's different games so you can give yourself a brain break, which again was part of the mental aspect of things. You can also you learn a little bit more about your body and also give yourself a little mental break and how to incorporate that into your workday as well.
I really like the idea of walking meetings because you think better when you're walking. And I kind of had a snapshot of that movie, that 80s movie, how to something with Michael J. Fox, I think, like how to be successful. I don't remember the title, but they
Oh,
would
you're gonna
play
have to,
like
yeah.
racquetball. And it's like, what happened to those days? Why don't we do that anymore? But
Well, so the one thing that I will say is that people love walking meetings, but then what happens? You go for a walk, you talk about these things, and then it's like, wait, what did we talk about? What did we get
uh,
everything? And so what I
yeah.
do with this form is it tells you like, okay, this is how far we're going to walk, not like how far, but like 20 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it is. Then it says like, here's the key points we're going to talk about. And then at the end, what you do is you go back and you kind of have this like layout and say, okay, here's the bullet points that I can kind of fill in so that you do have an actually productive and something that's useful because yes, I love walking meetings too. I love being out when I have conversations with people. I love actually, it does double duty and it's still productive. So that's what I love about walking meetings.
Yeah. So how can listeners connect with you online and where can they purchase your book?
My book is on Amazon. The Ultimate Workplace Toolkit, your guide to workplace solutions, for tech neck and beyond. That's easy. You just type in the Ultimate Workplace Toolkit. My favorite place is LinkedIn. I love connecting with people on LinkedIn. Over this past summer, I was attacked by bots and I had to take my Instagram down. I was one of those people, that's another long story. I was getting really inappropriate comments on posts and it wrecked things, and so I just started over right before the holiday season and I started TikTok too. So you can find me at alessa.caridi on both Instagram and TikTok, and go support me there because those are brand new, absolutely brand new. But LinkedIn, I'm always over there. Send me a message, connect in. Obviously my website JōbuFIT.com, JOBUFIT.com, which is where you can find all of my information and send me an email. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, Alessa, thank you so much for joining me today. There's so much to learn, and I know in the future I'd love to dive into stretching and more of the exercises listeners can do and
Yeah,
viewers can see you do,
yeah,
demonstrate
we can
for them.
definitely schedule that. That would be awesome. I'd appreciate that too. And it was great talking to you too.
That's it for this episode. Please see the description to connect with today's guest. And please share and rate this podcast on your preferred platform. Thank you for listening and stay strong and well.